Evan Shaw was the Alpha Galaxy's greatest commander in a century. The Empire's only S-class guide. The mother of my child. The bastard who abandoned his family. I don't deny I made a small mistake during that psychic overload. But I can take responsibility for it. Evan looked at me, his handsome face as brilliant as ever, just like the medals on his chest. Who asked you to take responsibility? He couldn't care less about that one-night stand. Charles, right now you look like a pathetic stray someone kicked into the gutter. His gaze dropped to the child we shared. Our precious son. Take your little mutt with you and get out. Evan and I met during the Academy's war games. Of the 100+ governments in the galaxy, the two largest are the Federation and the Empire. And the Academy's war games are the biggest event in the galaxy. For centuries, the military academies throughout the galaxy have sent their best talent to the front lines. Generation after generation, passing the torch and trusting their lives to one another. That's how we slowly pushed the swarm out of the Alpha Galaxy. That year, I was a Federation assault specialist, and he was the Empire's commander. Evan's too strong. No wonder they call him the Empire's son. Our medic said over the comms, sounding defeated. Our commander clapped him on the shoulder and gave him a wicked grin. Everyone present felt a shiver run down their spine. All's fair in war. It's time to play our ace. I was lying in ambush at the front lines when I received a completely ridiculous mission. Kidnap the Empire's S-class commander. As an assault specialist on the battlefield, you're supposed to follow orders. So I asked sincerely over the comms, did command lose its damn mind? Come on. I believe in you, Captain Anderson. You're both S-class, what's the difference? You've even got an extra S on him. I smiled. Can you even compare an S-class Sentinel to an S-class guide? S-class Sentinels aren't exactly a dime a dozen, but you get a dozen or so a year. An S-class guide, on the other hand, is a once-in-a-generation phenomenon. TSK, don't sell yourself short. You're a double S-class Sentinel. He's the Empire's son, but you're our Federation's North Star. Too bad my light didn't blind you, I muttered, cutting the comms and rubbing the back of my neck. The mission was a pain in the ass, but it had to be done. A top assault specialist can't just say no. So, during the 123rd Alpha Galaxy Academy War Games, with everyone watching, broadcast across the entire galaxy, I kidnapped the Empire's son and assaulted him. And I got him pregnant. The Federation won the War Games that year. My personal prize was delivered to me 10 months later. A courier handed me a space capsule package. Hi, you'll need to open this and confirm the contents before you sign. I took the package, flipped it over, and gave it a little shake. What is it? I asked as I opened it. The moment I saw what was inside, my eyes went wide, my hand trembled, and I almost dropped the whole thing. Tucked inside was a baby, wrapped in a small blanket of imperial blue. There was also an old-fashioned piece of paper inside. I took it out with a shaking hand. As I read it, my vision went dark. Your kid. You can raise it or feed it to the dogs. It was a morning on my day off, and as usual, I was woken up by someone sitting squarely on my back. I opened my eyes to a close-up of a tender little face. The tender face of a 4-year and 5-month-old. A face that had never known a single hardship. Dad, wake up. I have to go to preschool. You gotta take me. The kid mumbled around the baby bottle in his mouth. I closed my eyes and told myself my little guy was already so mature. He even knew how to make his own bottle. Leo, buddy, can you get your butt off my back first? Leo scrambled off me with surprising agility. I wiped my face and got up to take him to preschool. But when we got to the entrance, we were told the school was closed for a holiday. Leo and I stared at each other. I was the first to crack. What's the deal? You can't even remember if you have school or not. Don't you have any self-respect as a big kid in preschool? Leo just poked his chubby fingers together. Before I could even get upset about not being able to sleep in on my rare day off, I got a call from my superior. Get to the training grounds. Now, how fast is now? I glanced at Leo, wanting to drop him off at home first. Immediately. Right now. I don't care if you're on the toilet, you get your ass over here. Got it. I scooped Leo up, tucked him under my arm, and immediately jumped into my hover car. speeding toward the military training grounds. When I arrived, I could see a huge commotion as soon as I walked in. In the middle of the field, two A-class mechs were locked in a brutal fight. Whoa, you don't see mechs of this caliber every day. I hadn't even reached the command platform before I started shouting. Which bunch of wannabes from who knows where thinks they can just waltz into the Federation for a friendly match? I looked up and suddenly froze, my foot hovering over the last step. Not far in front of me stood a major general in a blue and white uniform, the gold stars on his shoulders shining brightly. His face was handsome and cold, his sapphire blue eyes like ice. His short hair shifted slightly, and his fair skin could give my sons a run for its money. He looked at me like I was garbage. Isn't that my kid's mom? My smug grin vanished. Evan's cold gaze moved from my face to my armpit. The kid, who had been wriggling a moment ago, suddenly went still. I immediately sensed trouble. I put Leo down and cleared my throat. The moment his feet hit the ground, Leo didn't run around like he usually did. Instead, he stuck close to my leg, pointing a finger at Evan, his eyes sparkling. My stomach dropped. I looked up at Evan, only to see that he had already looked away. His gaze was once again fixed on the dueling mechs in the training field. "Daddy, it's Mommy." A childish voice broke the silence. I looked down at my fearless little calf who wasn't afraid of any tiger. "Good eye," I said. Then, under the furious glares of the Federation's top brass, had someone quickly take the kid away. I sidled up to Evan. "General Shaw, long time no see." Evan, wearing white gloves, flicked at the sleeve of my arm that had gotten too close, as if brushing off something filthy. He didn't even give me a glance, let alone a reply. I rubbed the tip of my nose with my forefinger, still feeling guilty and in the wrong. It all started with the war games 6 years ago. I had kidnapped Evan on a solo mission. The plan was perfect until the very end, when my psychic energy went into overload and I forced myself on him. After Sentinels manifest their powers, they need regular mental soothing from a guide. But because my power level was so high, the Federation had no guide who could stabilize my mindscape. As a result, it was always unstable, and it got worse as I got older. The moment I truly met Evan, my psychic energy completely spiraled out of control. I couldn't tell if it was excitement or something else, but my quantum beast materialized. A black tiger with gold stripes pounced on a pure white spiritual deer, tearing at it. The deer cried out in pain but couldn't break free. I acted on pure instinct, seeking a guide's comfort. I nearly tore the guide apart and devoured him whole. When I woke up, I saw Evan, his clothes in tatters, his body covered in bruises. But I felt refreshed and clear-headed. My mindscape had never been so stable, so full of energy, since I first manifested. The incident enraged the Imperial Academy, but thanks to the Federation pulling strings to protect me, my punishment was a slap on the wrist. Until 10 months later when I received that space capsule package. By the time I snapped back to reality, the match on the training field was over. The Imperial soldier had won by a narrow margin. The group of people behind Evan stood up a little straighter. With that, everyone moved to the conference room. The main topic of discussion today is the unusual activity in recent years from the swarm entrenched at the edge of the galaxy. I listened intently to my superior's analysis, while constantly sneaking glances at Evan. Evan sat in the first seat on the right. Even sitting down, he looked perfectly straight and composed. The blue and white uniform made his shoulders look broad but lean. His waist was narrow, and I knew the legs hidden under the conference table were long and slender. For some reason, my mind flashed back to a dark cave on a cliff, where a pair of fair, long, powerful legs kicked at my shoulder, only for me to grab them, press them down, and run my hands all over them. "Charles? Charles Anderson." "Huh? Yes, sir. What are you spacing out for?" "You'll be leading the team for this mission on the Federation side." "Yes, sir." Now I had a legitimate reason to look at Evan. I smiled. "Major General Shaw, I'll be in your care." He glanced at me but said nothing. After the meeting, I went looking for my son, who had run off to play somewhere. I'm usually busy with training and missions, so I often leave Leo at the military base, where there are people who specialize in looking after the kids. Leo got along great with the other children here. With my kid in tow, I went to find his mother. I knocked on the door of his room at the guest quarters. When the door opened, I moved the child I was holding in front of me.
Surprise.
General, our little Leo said he misses his mommy. Leo played his part perfectly, immediately looking up and saying, "Mommy, I'm Leo. I'm 4.5." Evan's handsome face was a mask of cold fury as he started to shut the door. I quickly stuck my hand out to block it. A guide's strength, in the end, is no match for a sentinel's. I don't deny I made a small mistake during my psychic overload back then, but I have no intention of shirking my responsibility. I can take responsibility. Evan looked at me and sneered. Who asked you to take responsibility? Charles, right now you look like a pathetic stray someone kicked into the gutter. His gaze dropped to the child we shared. My precious son, take your little mutt with you and get out. Slam. The door was thrown shut. If I hadn't pulled my hand back in time, either my hand or the door would have been wrecked. Isn't there a saying about the boundless love of parents? Aren't mothers supposed to be the only true giants in the world? Isn't it said that there's no mother who doesn't love her child? How could Evan be so cruel? He threw the baby at me the moment he was born and hadn't seen him once in over 4 years. I didn't get it. Looking down at Leo's tear-filled eyes, my heart ached. Don't cry, don't cry. Mommy just doesn't like Daddy. Not you. Both the Federation and the Empire were taking the Swarm's unusual activity very seriously. Otherwise, the Empire wouldn't have sent Evan to negotiate. He was undoubtedly the best commander in the Alpha Galaxy at present. After a Federation S-Class guide died in battle 2 years ago, he became the only S-Class guide still active on the front lines. His significance to the Empire was like the sun's to the ancient Earth. His existence was light itself. And a being like that was sullied by a street dog like me, born in the Federation's underbelly. It's no exaggeration to say I was public enemy number 1 in the Empire. There was a huge bounty on my head on the Imperial Dark Web. This joint operation included a week-long integration training period. The Imperials took turns coming at me, trying to wear me down in a series of one-on-one fights. Being the nice guy I am, of course, I accepted all challengers. Seriously, Charles, what's with you? Can your mindscape handle piloting a mech at this intensity? My friend asked during a break. I had just gotten out of my mech, my hair completely soaked with sweat. I had just gone up against 2 of the Empire's S-Class pilots back to back. Although I beat them both, it took a huge toll on me, especially since my mindscape wasn't stable to begin with. A faint, sharp pain was already starting in my head. It was a precursor to a psychic overload and collapse. I waved my hand at my friend as if nothing was wrong. I tipped my head back and finished the water in the bottle, then crushed the plastic in my hand. The last S-Class Sentinel from the Empire whistled at me. Colonel Anderson, you still got anything left in the tank? I scoffed and tossed the plastic bottle into the trash. More than you. As I walked toward my mech, my eyes subconsciously searched for Evan. I saw him standing on the 2nd floor of the training grounds, looking straight at me. That was rare. He wasn't ignoring me for once. Could he have been conquered by my power and masculine charm? I immediately flashed him a huge grin. Feeling like I'd just been shot up with adrenaline, I proceeded to beat the hell out of the Imperial Colonel. By the time I got out of the mech, my head was spinning. I forced myself to shower in the training room locker. By the time I was clean, everyone else had left. I walked alone to Evan's quarters. I knocked on his door. The moment he opened it, I caught him off guard and pushed. I slipped inside quickly and shut the door behind me. Charles, what do you think you're doing? I lowered my head slightly, looking at Evan pitifully. Help me. My mindscape is about to collapse. Only you can soothe me. Evan, just like last time. Help me. Evan's expression changed. He balled his fist and swung at my face. You have the nerve to bring that up, you bastard. I reached out and caught his fist. Yeah, I'm a bastard. I chuckled lowly, leaning in close to Evan, and kissed the lips of the Empire's son without leaving any room for refusal. A battle of lips and tongues, not backing down even when we drew blood. A moment later, our wet lips parted, stained with saliva and blood. But back then, didn't you let it happen? After I forced you, you still helped me stabilize my mindscape. Why, Evan? Evan's usually cold, calm eyes finally showed a flicker of change. He frowned, seeming to recall a painful memory. His hand slowly traced a path up my chest. I couldn't help but feel a surge of desire. His touch sent a numbing tingle through me, passed over my collarbone and finally stopped at my neck. Suddenly, he squeezed. The feeling of suffocation was abrupt. I wasn't fazed. I smirked and pressed my hips against his. The first time I lost control. I didn't do a good job. Give me another chance? Evan narrowed his eyes, his hand sliding down from my neck. He grabbed hold of what truly mattered. A jolt of pleasure shot through me. But as his grip tightened, I immediately begged for mercy. My mindscape is really about to go critical. This is the first time the Empire and the Federation have cooperated in years. You don't want me to lose it on the battlefield and start attacking our own, do you? Besides, it was your Imperial soldiers who pushed me to this point. I could have held on a little longer. I grumbled, feigning grievance. But the man in front of me just sneered, his hand tightening to the point of pain. A fine sweat broke out on my forehead. I lowered my head and pressed my forehead against his, my damp sweat smearing onto him. He flinched away in disgust, and his grip loosened slightly. I immediately pushed my luck. General Shaw, help me out. I'm more useful than your entire Special Forces company. He raised an eyebrow at me. And how would you prove you're useful to me? He emphasized the last two words. I knew I had gambled correctly. Evan liked useful people. 6 years ago, he had tolerated what happened. He didn't kill me, the brute who had assaulted him, during my period of weakness after the overload. It was because I was useful on the battlefield. The Empire's seemingly perfect son was, in reality, a ruthless politician. He could endure humiliation for the sake of power and the greater good. But I didn't want to humiliate him. I wanted to give him love. I'll even be your dog. I bit his neck. Not long after, the Joint Federation Imperial Special Operations Group set off to clear out the swarm at the edge of the Alpha Galaxy. But as we were approaching our destination, in a desolate asteroid belt, the fleet was suddenly hit by an unknown attack, suffering heavy losses, especially Evan's flagship. Damn it! I piloted my mech through the barrage of fire and charged into the flagship. The place was already in chaos, not just from the shelling. A squad of Sentinel assassins was also slaughtering their way through the fleet. I cut down another assassin blocking my path, my temper rising. A massive black and gold tiger appeared out of thin air, tearing into the assassins in my way. I fought my way to the command deck. The path was littered with bodies and signs of battle. Their target was definitely Evan. Evan was the Empire's guide, but he was more than that. He had saved countless Sentinels on the battlefield against the swarm, not just from the Empire, but from many other governments as well, who all revered him as a god. His existence was a symbol of faith, of hope, and these ambushers wanted to kill that faith. In an instant, I unleashed my full psychic power. The two assassins closest to me, directly in my path, were hit by the force of my psychic blast. They died instantly, bleeding from all 7 orifices. At full power, a high-tier Sentinel had absolute dominance over lower-tier ones. I charged into the command deck, my heart tightening when I saw the violently breached door. I cranked my laser sword to maximum power. If they had actually killed Evan, I would make every single one of them pay with their lives, including whoever was behind this. Without hesitation, I sliced through the corpse blocking my way and moved forward. Suddenly, a sense of foreboding washed over me. I dodged sideways on instinct. A powerful laser beam grazed past my mech's face. I immediately powered up and charged forward. My laser sword swung down on the person behind the laser cannon. But as I saw their figure, I stopped the blade at the last second, barely nicking a strand of their hair. You son of a bitch! My eyes were red with fury. Seeing Evan, completely unharmed, I was overcome with an indescribable sense of grievance. You shot at me, just testing your reflexes. Those icy blue eyes still held little warmth. Countless bodies lay around him, enemies and comrades alike. But none of it seemed to stir any emotion in him. I wanted to curse him out, but instead, I disengaged my mech and pulled him into a fierce hug. Just then, there was a deafening explosion. I instinctively reactivated my mech's full armor, and we both fell into the Tourmalin's cockpit. Then came a massive shockwave. The Tourmalin, a combat mech stolen by the Federation from an Imperial lab 26 years ago. Of the 10 legendary mechs in the Alpha Galaxy, it has the highest physical demands on its pilot. When I returned to the crash site with wild fruits and a plucked wild chicken, Evan was already awake. He had been caught in the blast, suffering various internal injuries. Lying in the palm of the mech's hand, he looked a little disheveled, but his expression was as calm and composed as ever. It was as if we hadn't been blasted to a desolate planet by the flagship's explosion, but as if he were still presiding over an Imperial military conference. Hearing my footsteps, he looked up, his gaze sharp and direct. "Charles, you're more than just a double S-class, aren't you?" I chuckled but didn't answer his question. Instead, I said, "What do you mean, stolen? This was a war trophy for the Federation. It's not like you guys haven't snatched plenty of good stuff from us." He didn't comment, his voice weak. "It looks like the damage isn't too severe. Can it still be activated?" I knew what he meant. The Tourmalin was a Starship-class mech, capable of free travel in space. But it can start, but half the power system is fried. We were at ground zero of the explosion, and the outer anti-radiation layer was blown off. In short, we couldn't leave the planet. We'll have to sit tight and wait for rescue. Even if we manage to get it off the ground, who knows if the Liberator's anti-military forces are still out there. I held a washed wild fruit to his lips. "Here, eat something." His arm was broken, so he couldn't move easily, but he didn't immediately eat the fruit I offered. I tooted and took a bite myself. "God, you paranoid strategists. It's not poisoned." But the next second, my face scrunched up. Evan saw this and sneered. "Idiot, you can tell that fruit isn't ripe." I spat out the sour, astringent fruit and gave him a thumbs up. Sharp eyes, Commander. So, I gave up on the pile of fruit and started roasting the chicken. I stuffed all the unripe fruit into the chicken's cavity as seasoning. The final product actually tasted pretty good. His Excellency the Commander deigned to eat half of it. This was a barren planet with few resources, and after nightfall, danger lurked everywhere. But the commotion from the mech crash during the day had scared away all the nearby beasts. It was relatively quiet here. I pulled my formal military uniform out of the mech and draped it over Evan. "There are no blankets in the cockpit. You'll have to make do." He frowned slightly in disgust. The temperature difference between day and night on this planet was huge. With the mech's power system mostly destroyed, even with the heat on, Evan was so cold his lips turned pale. I slowly moved closer to him and, with his silent permission, gently held him, using my body to warm him. A moment later, he suddenly said, "Stop pressing against me. I was a little innocent. I can't really control that." He smelled so good. Even stranded on this desolate planet, a faint, orchid-like fragrance emanated from his skin. How was that any different from trying to seduce me? "I can help you control it." His threatening voice whispered in my ear, sending a wave of tingles across my skin. Oh crap, I was even harder. Taking advantage of the fact that he was injured and could barely move, I pushed my luck, rubbing my leg against his through our clothes. "Charles," he gritted his teeth. "Here, what are your orders, master?" My attitude was impeccable. "You, shoot." I suddenly held up my middle finger to him. He instinctively fell silent. I listened intently for a moment, my brow gradually furrowing. Something's approaching. A lot of somethings. I woke the Tourmalin's AI. "Tourmalin, activate scanners. Scan the vicinity and identify what's approaching." I had kept the Tourmalin in a semi-dormant state to conserve energy, but I couldn't worry about that now. On the system's thermal imaging scan, I saw hordes of animals stampeding in our direction. I stared at the screen. The herd moved like a river. Increase scan range. The scan range expanded bit by bit, and the thing driving the herds gradually came into view. Countless insect-like creatures, large and small, appeared on the screen. The swarm. Evan's voice turned icy again. I slapped my forehead. Of course. Talk about when it rains, it pours. If it were just the planet's native animals, even a massive stampede wouldn't be a problem. Even damaged, the tourmalin's shell was made of incredibly tough, refined steel and superplanetary materials. The local beasts couldn't do a thing to it. But most of the swarm species had the ability to chew through metal. A broken mech was a feast for them. Evan's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp and decisive. Cut the tourmalin's defense systems and any detachable, damaged power systems. Retain only the core basic attack functions and the cockpit's radiation shielding. Launch immediately and prepare to escape the planet. Yes, sir, I answered instinctively, snapping to attention. An assault specialist must obey when a commander has made a decision, even if it means abandoning the mech you've fought alongside. My heart bleeding, I quickly began manually dismantling the damaged power systems and heavy defensive plating. I knew Evan's decision was the right one. The swarm craved metal, they were incredibly fast, and high-level swarm could even fly in space. Our only chance of survival was to travel light. But there was no telling if the liberators were still sweeping the area outside the planet's atmosphere. Stripped down and traveling light, the tourmalin shot into the sky just before the main swarm forces arrived. Using a 3-stage acceleration, it broke through the atmosphere at supersonic speed, escaping the planet's gravity. The stampeding herds being devoured by the swarm were left far behind. But some of the high-level swarm, attracted by the tourmalin's launch, pursued us without hesitation. I piloted the tourmalin, dodging asteroids in the planetary belt while keeping a close watch on our surroundings. Which way? I asked Evan. He stared at the screen. Head to Beta Star at the edge of the galaxy. There's a secret Imperial garrison stationed there. I raised an eyebrow. You guys have troops stationed at the edge of the galaxy? That's a violation of the 10 Articles of Peace. But my hands didn't slow down as I searched for Beta Star's coordinates. Evan said calmly, yes, so you can go and wipe out that garrison for me. I knew right away that he was not happy with that unit, or rather, with the person who made that decision. I snorted. Trying to get me to do your dirty work? He didn't bother to reply, his eyes fixed on the screen. I quickly ran over and gave him a kiss. Shouldn't you reward me first, then? Just fly the damn ship. He snapped at me. Is this how your Federation enforces military discipline? I immediately shot back, this is personal. Don't bring my country into it. Beta Star's coordinates appeared on the screen, but my brow furrowed slightly. The tourmalin doesn't have enough power to make a journey that long. During the explosion on the flagship, the tourmalin had been running its shields at maximum power, consuming most of its energy reserves. Just as I said that, a new fleet of ships appeared on the screen. I took a closer look, and my expression turned cold. Just as I thought. The Liberators are sweeping the area. The Liberators, the Alpha Galaxy's largest armed terrorist organization. Their doctrine was to establish a world of absolute equality and freedom, with no laws and no nations. Everyone could live as they pleased, even if you made a living by robbing others. They claimed to treat every species equally, including the swarm. In short, they were the biggest troublemakers in the Alpha Galaxy. Looks like they're after you. But how did they find out about the joint operation? This wasn't the first or second time the Liberators had tried to assassinate Evan, but this mission was highly classified. They shouldn't have been able to get such precise information. Evan's face was grim. A rock and a hard place, I murmured. He suddenly said, full speed. Approach the mech on the edge of the Liberator formation. I looked into Evan's calm, blue eyes. Yes, Commander. The tourmalin was different from the ordinary mechs the Liberators used for patrols. Stripped down and at full speed, it approached the speed of light. The moment the tourmalin entered that mech scan range, felt like a cool breeze swept past me. I turned to look at Evan. He had his eyes closed. The next second, his icy eyes flew open, shining brightly. A snow-white spiritual deer had silently appeared beside him. It was his quantum beast. Get close to that mech. We're going to use it to recharge the tourmalin. Roger that. We were already within the mech's attack range, but it was still just in scanning mode. The moment our two mechs docked, I saw the pilot in the opposite cockpit floating unconscious in mid-air. If not for his safety harness, he probably would have rolled into a corner somewhere. But the mech itself was still running normally. Seizing control of a mech systems, that was a guide's specialty. Compared to a sentinel's powerful but volatile and uncontrollable psychic energy, guides were born masters of the mind. I looked at the report on my screen. Recharge complete. The Tourmalin's energy is back to 30%. Enough for consecutive jumps to reach Beta Star. Let's go. Yes, sir. We successfully arrived at the jump point for Beta Star. I looked at the screen, my expression more solemn than ever. The bad news is we haven't shaken the swarm. I watched the Swarm Legion trailing us at near light speed. Within scan range, more swarm are continuously converging. We're predicting the formation of a full-blown swarm, scale currently unpredictable. The Tourmalin's mechanical voice chimed in at the same time. Energy levels below 1%. Pilot, please recharge the Tourmalin as soon as possible. Evan gave the order, have the Tourmalin open communications and proceed to Beta Star at full speed. I immediately opened the Tourmalin's comms channel. The moment I did, a blaring warning sounded. Final warning. Unidentified vessel, halt immediately. You have entered Beta Star's anti-missile defense perimeter. If you continue to advance, you will be considered an intruder, and under the Beta Star Defense Act, we have the right to destroy you. I knew that voice all too well. It was an Imperial colonel I didn't get along with. I had beaten him up multiple times when I was an exchange student in the Empire. I blurted out, Beta Star doesn't have a damn defense act. There was a second of silence on the other end. Then confusion. Charles Anderson? That's Grandpa to you. The voice on the other end flew into a rage. Shit. He's daring to impersonate a Federation colonel. It must be the Liberators. Maximum firepower. Blow him to hell for me. I was shocked. Captain Hayes, you're using this as an excuse for a personal vendetta. At the same time, a calm voice cut in. Hayes, this is Evan Shaw. I am assuming military command of Beta Star. Colonel Anderson and I are arriving at the Beta Star space station in 2 minutes aboard the Tourmalin. Prepare an S-class refueling platform. We have a swarm on our tail. Scale unknown but still gathering. Begin charging the anti-missile system to disperse their formation. The other end went silent for a moment. Then the voice became calm and serious. Yes, sir. Captain Hayes of the Empire's 7th Legion hereby formally transfers command to Major General Evan Shaw. Captain Hayes and Evan met at the space station. Evan was able to get into a medical pod for treatment. He was still commanding the battle while floating in the medical fluid. But this swarm was unusually stubborn. Even after being hit by high-energy laser cannons multiple times, with piles of swarm corpses accumulating, they kept coming. I stood guard by Evan's side, my fingers drumming restlessly as I watched the battle reports. This is no ordinary swarm. Evan, fully recovered, stood up out of the medical fluid. I instinctively looked over, my eyes practically popping out of my head. The translucent green medical fluid slid down his fair skin. A single drop lingered for a moment in the small of his back before quickly disappearing into the cleft of his. I swallowed hard. He glanced at me and walked straight into the bathroom to rinse off. When he came out, he was already dressed in the Imperial blue and white combat uniform. His white combat pants were tucked into black military boots. His legs were so long and straight. When he wrapped them around my waist, smack, he walked over and slapped me across the head without a shred of mercy. I clutched my head and looked at him mournfully. Captain Hayes knocked and entered, holding a paper report. Major General, these are the 7th Legion's records of nearby swarm activity. Evan flipped through it, his blue eyes gradually narrowing. I think we've found the broodmother. Both Hayes and I were stunned. Hayes blurted out, how can you tell? Is it true? Realizing his mistake, he quickly bowed his head and glanced cautiously at Evan. General, I'm not questioning your judgment. I'm just so surprised. I wanted to grind my teeth watching him suck up like that. I still didn't know what he was up to. Evan didn't hold it against him and nodded. Go and prepare. The 7th Legion is the largest of the garrison legions. You will be the main force for the next 24 hours of the war. I've already sent a request for reinforcements to Imperial Central Command. Yes, sir. After Hayes left, Evan stood up and walked toward me. Step by step, he got closer and closer. His hand, exceptionally fair from always wearing gloves, rested on my chest. I swallowed. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't try to seduce a soldier of the people, or I'll give in just to show you. His hand moved down to my firm arm and gave it a squeeze. I was about to get hard. Just as my mind was wandering, he suddenly grabbed my wrist with lightning speed. He quickly pressed a few buttons on my watch, and it slid off my wrist. He caught it and tossed it casually onto a nearby table. Your Federation reinforcements should be arriving soon, right? I looked at the disconnected communicator, unable to play dumb any longer. Well, maybe, probably. The next second, Evan's communicator rang. General, the Federation's Lumina Legion is requesting entry. Evan's lips curved into an unreadable smile as he glanced at me. He spoke into the communicator, permission granted. After hanging up, he didn't move away. Instead, he gave me a smile. The Lumina Legion is your direct command, isn't it? He reached out and stroked my face, giving it a gentle pinch. Didn't you want to be my dog? Then help me kill a few people. His hand smelled so good. I subtly sniffed the air and asked, who do you want to kill? In the Imperial garrison, aside from the 7th Legion, leave no officer at the rank of colonel or above alive. Of course, after this battle, they will all be heroes who sacrifice themselves to fight the swarm. I won't let you have a black mark on your record. He reached out to straighten my shirt collar, then slowly wrapped his arms around my neck. All right? His face was so close to mine I could see my own reflection in his icy blue eyes. My mind was reeling and I was about to agree on the spot. But the last shred of my sanity asked, why kill them? You already have military command of Beta Star. According to the articles of this joint operation, my Lumina Legion and I are also under your command. These are all Imperial Warhawks. Once the war with the swarm is over, they will undoubtedly push for war with the Federation. Our political views don't align. I'm taking this opportunity to clean house. I hadn't expected him to be thinking that far ahead. But, aren't you a Warhawk too? There are different kinds of Warhawks and stances can change. These people's biggest mistake was choosing the wrong side. Understand? His thumb rubbed against my lips. I opened my mouth and took it in, gnawing lightly with my canines, as if using his finger to sharpen my teeth. He pulled it out after a few seconds. His teasing had made my eyes red with desire. My voice was hoarse. Understood. Colonel Charles Anderson, commander of the Federation's Lumina Legion, at your command. I gave him one last deep look and turned to leave. As I was closing the door behind me, I said with my back to him, you left one thing out. These people and the generals behind them are probably the chauvinists within the Empire who secretly support the liberators, right? But I'd help you even if they weren't. Evan, I hope you can be more honest with me in the future. After leaving Evan's office, I went straight to find the vice commander of the Lumina Legion, my second in command. Did you bring it? I asked him. He handed me a spatial compressor. Yes, Commander. I clapped him on the shoulder. You guys get a good night's rest tonight. We've got a tough fight ahead of us. I never doubted Evan's judgment. If the broodmother was truly nearby, it meant we were about to face a nearly endless battle against the swarm. They would do everything in their power to protect their mother, just as we would give everything to protect the homes behind us. As for the mission Evan had given me, I was enough on my own. I took the spatial compressor. That night, a swarm assassination squad launched a surprise attack, killing more than 10 Imperial officers of colonel rank. Commander Evan Shaw was furious and ordered an all-out assault to wipe out the swarm. Thanks to thorough preparation, the swarm was beaten back, even retreating from the edge of the Alpha Galaxy. But Evan ordered a relentless pursuit. On the flagship of the pursuit fleet, I frowned at Evan. I'm not questioning your decision, but it's too risky for you to be part of the chase. No commander deserts his post. Evan stared at the large screen where data flowed rapidly, not even sparing me a glance. I tried to reason with him. What if this is a trap, designed to lure you out and assassinate you outside the Alpha Galaxy? You know damn well what kind of image you've cultivated for yourself in the Empire. If something happens to you, at least half of the active Sentinels in the Empire will riot. So what? He finally deigned to look at me, but his eyes held a suppressed fanaticism. The swarm's broodmother is in its prime right now. If we can kill it, the Alpha Galaxy will be safe from swarm invasion for at least 100 years. Therefore, all sacrifices are worthwhile. If I die here, many will follow in my footsteps to avenge me, including you, Charles. He stood on the steps, looking down at me, and tilted my chin up. He wasn't even pretending anymore. I sighed internally, knowing there was no way to talk him out of it. I had been an exchange student in the Empire for 2 years. Like many other Imperial Sentinels, I had been completely captivated by Evan. I also learned that he was a war orphan. His parents were both killed by the swarm's blades when he was only 3. After killing his parents, the swarm had turned its blades on him. An Imperial soldier saved him, and the female general who raised him also died on the front lines 10 years ago. Evan touched the corner of my eye and kissed me with a sigh. We have no way out, Charles. This has always been a war of survival between our species, a fight to the death. A high-level Sentinel's sixth sense is usually spot on. We were, of course, ambushed. The swarm's remaining forces were much larger than we had calculated. The broodmother, which had spent its entire life gestating, had birthed an army of Iron Mantis guards in a short time. The scythes on these mantises could easily tear through the armor of ordinary mechs. Our only option was to attack from a distance with laser cannons. But deep in enemy territory, our supplies were limited, while the enemy could continuously produce high-level swarm. Even the bodies of dead swarm and humans were food for the broodmother. In the flagship's command center, Captain Hayes knelt 2 steps before Evan, one hand over his chest. There was not a trace of hesitation in his eyes. The 7th Legion swears to protect the commander to the death. We will fight to our last breath. As he spoke his oath, another explosion flashed across the main screen. It was the self-destruct sequence of a mech whose pilot had been confirmed dead. It prevented the human remains and intact mech from becoming food for the broodmother. One after another, the explosions bloomed like fireworks in space. But such fireworks seemed so small and insignificant in the vastness of the cosmos. Captain Hayes gave Evan one last, deep look, then resolutely walked out of the command center. He was going to pilot a mech and join the fight. I looked at Evan. You're not the type to go into a fight unprepared. What's your ace in the hole this time? You, he said simply. I ran a hand through my hair in frustration, not at his decision, but at my own powerlessness. I'm just a double S-class Sentinel. In this situation, the most I can do is get you out of here. You'd be willing to do that? He stood before the large screen, his posture ramrod straight as he looked at me. I've analyzed your genes. Your potential is beyond double S-class. At first, I thought the Federation was hiding your true strength, but your mindscape and physical condition indeed aren't at the 3S level. Why? I gave a bitter smile. Why else? Malnutrition during my growth phase. It was the truth. I was born on a junk planet and was still fighting hyenas for food in my teens. If the swarm hadn't appeared on that planet, and the Federation hadn't sent troops to clean it out and rescue me, I don't know if I'd be dead or alive right now. That's why I'm so careful about our Leo's diet now. He's not even 5, but his physical condition is already better than that of a 7 or 8-year-old. He nodded. I know. I paused, pleasantly surprised. You know, you've been keeping an eye on him? He looked at my smile and, after a couple of seconds, said, Of course. A child with the genes of the Alpha Galaxy's best Sentinel and Guide has a high probability of manifesting as a 3S Sentinel or Guide in the future. The smile froze on my face. What do you mean? He's just a child. He's a child born in an era of war. Besides, why do you think I gave birth to him in the first place? I had never seen Evan's blue eyes look so cold. So our child was just another tool of war to him. For a moment, I felt a wave of despair. If we both die here, will Leo just follow in your footsteps? Evan, you're so cruel. You've walked through the rain yourself, yet you'd tear up your own child's umbrella. It seems your desire to protect that little pup is very strong. Evan looked at me, his tone suddenly softening a little. There is a way. I was silent for a moment, then asked, what way? You kill the broodmother, and he can have peace. I gave a bitter laugh, starting to hate myself for not being more ferocious when I was fighting those hyenas for scraps. If I had grown into a 3S Sentinel, all of our current problems would be solved. You and I both know what it means to be a 3S class Sentinel or Guide, even if it's just one level of difference. The difference between 2S and 3S was like the difference between the ancient Earth and the Sun. Evan spoke slowly. The 10 legendary mechs, including the Tourmaline, were all originally designed as solo weapons for 3S class Sentinels and Guides. Do you know why your mech is called the Tourmaline? It was a symbol of imperial succession in an ancient Eastern nation, meant to defend indestructible power. But when the Federation took the Tourmaline from the Imperial lab, the mech had already been modified for a double S-class pilot. Because for 100 years, not a single 3S Sentinel or Guide has appeared in the entire Alpha Galaxy, Evan said with regret. I took out the spatial compressor. The Federation restored it, but they also lowered the physical requirements for the pilot. But a double S-class can only unleash a tenth of its power. Evan, I can only guarantee I'll get you out of here. I began to seriously consider the possibility of knocking Evan out and carrying him away. He couldn't die. He was the only surviving S-class Guide, and his significance to the Empire, and indeed to all of humanity, was immense. And besides, I didn't want him to die. I would risk my life to get him off this battlefield. Evan suddenly took out a spatial compressor of his own and placed it casually on the control console. The Glutton, also one of the 10 legendary mechs. I was worried you would need time to sync with a new mech, but it seems that won't be necessary now. My heart leaped as I looked at the spatial compressor on the console. Even for Evan, getting his hands on an experimental grade weapon of war like this couldn't have been easy. Although his psychic power was immense, an S-class Guide's physical constitution couldn't possibly handle the Glutton. So why did he go to all this trouble to get it? Before I could figure out an answer, countless mechanical arms shot out from the command center and wrapped around me. To my surprise, I found I couldn't break free no matter how hard I struggled. On the outside, though, I remained calm. Why are you tying me up? Looking for one last round of bondage play? Evan smiled, a smile that sent a chill down my spine. It was the kind of smile a supervillain gives when their world-destroying plan has succeeded. You know the one. Evan, calm down. Whatever you're planning, let's talk it through. Arg! An excruciating pain shot through my body as I was submerged in a high-concentration healing fluid. The next second, a massive surge of life force flooded into me, rapidly expanding my mindscape. At the same time, my skin, blood vessels, and even my internal organs were torn apart by the rapid expansion of my psychic energy. Then they were continuously repaired by the medical fluid. And the source of this life force was Evan, standing just a step in front of me. He was compressing his own psychic power, infusing it with his life force, and transferring it all to me. My pupils constricted, and I began to struggle violently again. What are you doing? Stop. Evan, you'll die if you keep this up. Tears of blood streamed from my eyes, which felt like they were about to burst. The skin on my face cracked and split, only to be constantly repaired. But the physical agony was nothing compared to my fear. Evan traced the outline of my face through the glass. I'm giving you what you missed during your development. You'll have the strength to protect your little pup. A mechanical arm descended from the ceiling, with 2 transparent tubes attached. Evan inserted the needle at one end just above my heart, then, without hesitation, plunged the other into his own. Our blood flowed into the core of the mechanical arm, circulated, and then returned to our respective bodies. But the blood returning to me now carried a gentle psychic energy. It was obvious where it came from. Before my eyes, Evan's hair began to turn white, starting from the tips. The color drained from his face at a visible rate. The light in his sapphire blue eyes began to fade. I don't want it. Stop. I told you to stop. Evan, I just want to protect you. Please stop. I'm begging you. Evan, my roars turned into pleas. It was no use. In the year 3208 of the Alpha Galaxy calendar, Federation Colonel Charles Anderson, piloting the Tourmaline, single-handedly killed the swarm's broodmother. The swarm was defeated and retreated far away. This marked the beginning of a century of peace for the Alpha Galaxy. In 3218, the 10th anniversary of the Battle of Beta Star, and also the 10th anniversary of the death of the Empire's son, Evan Shaw, Charles Anderson stood at the very front, a boy who came up to his shoulder standing beside him. The boy's face was calm, and he had the same sapphire blue eyes as his father, though much softer. Behind them stood numerous generals from both the Empire and the Federation. At the first toll of the bell, everyone bowed in unison. A light rain had begun to fall at some point, dotting the uniforms of the assembled leaders. But no one cared. All eyes were fixed on the photograph on the gravestone, on those commanding, icy eyes. Finally, Leo, the deceased's only living relative, stepped forward and placed a bouquet of ice-blue roses at the base of the monument. From the moment they arrived at the heroes' cemetery to the moment they left, Charles was silent, until they returned to their home in the Federation capital. In 10 years, he had upgraded from a small apartment to a small villa with a garden. As soon as he opened the door, he gasped and roared, "Damn it, oh!" A small husky, tongue lolling, wriggled out from under the sofa. Leo, who followed Charles in, was just as horrified by the chaos inside. He glanced at the time and cried out, "Oh no! Dad gets off work in 10 minutes. He'll be home in 20. The father and son didn't waste a second. They rolled up their sleeves and started cleaning up the mess the husky had made. All the while, they bickered. "It's all your fault, you little brat. You were the one who had to get a dog. Well, you're the one who wanted a husky, you old fossil. I wanted a Samoyed. You think your father could stand that dopey Samoyed smile? That's rich. He doesn't like huskies either." 20 minutes later, Evan walked in the door. He raised an eyebrow at the now much emptier house, which was even missing its sofa. Charles immediately moved a dining chair over for him. "Honey, have a seat." Leo eagerly presented him with a cup of hot tea. "Dad, it was brewed with 90-degree water and has been cooling for a third of the time." Enjoying the royal treatment in this household, Evan put down his briefcase and slowly sipped his tea. A moment later, just as sweat was about to drip from their foreheads, he said unhurriedly, "It's fine. It was about time we got a new sofa anyway." The father and son let out a simultaneous sigh of relief. Charles started making dinner. Leo obediently did his homework. Everyone had their role. Evan went to the bathroom to shower and changed into his home clothes. His face was very young, but his hair was pure white, and his eyes were a lifeless gray. Aside from those two things, he looked exactly like the Empire's son. But the Federation's General Anderson insisted he was just a look-alike he'd found out of an unrequited obsession with the late Major General Shaw. The general was a fallen hero, and this man was indeed just a low-level E-class guide, a world apart from the Empire's son. As for the real story, who knows? In any case, all the generals of the Empire and the Federation groveled before that face. And General Anderson himself had to fight tooth and nail, even playing the single dad card, to earn the privilege of being the beauty's dog.